Hi class, welcome to your first lab, Lab 0, where we do an intro to R and an R orientation, with the main goals being to get the applications installed, get an overview of working around that interface, and getting started with some basic skills that you'll need for working with data and generating basic graphs. So for this first part, we're going to install R in RStudio and also look at a cloud-based RStudio option. We're going to review the RStudio panels, get organized with the working files, go over basic terms, and try out functions and packages. And of course, look at some options for getting help. I would say to watch through this recording of Intro R first, and then install R in RStudio on your own system, and that way you're already ready to start working with part 2 and 3 of the Lab 0. If you run into challenges, run into glitches, and need some help, just let me know. You can come see me at office hours, or let me know if you'd like to set up a Zoom meeting. And we also have TAs this term that can work with you for getting set with any glitches you're running into. So intro to R. What is R? Well, it's a programming language, very similar to Python or HTML. And also you've already seen some of it with SPSS syntax. It's where we're using coding to tell the application what we want it to do. Why use R? Well, accessibility is a big thing. It's free, it's open source, which makes it more accessible without that barrier of a cost involved. So it's becoming increasingly popular in both academia and industry. The functions are being updated constantly, also by open source programmers. And once you get over the learning curve, it easily produces customizable journal quality graphics. Now, getting through that learning curve, which is mostly up at the front, we're going to be using RStudio. And most programmers use RStudio anyway when working with R. It's considered an integrated development environment, so it gives us some helps in structuring how we code things so that when we run it, it runs more smoothly. It's not the same as a GUI, which is a user interface that's just point and click. You're actually coding, but we're getting some help with it with the IDE. It's also open source, so it's free to use and to acquire. So first we're going to install R and then RStudio on our computers. And I'm going to walk you through that process and show you some screens for it. To install R, we're going to go to the internet to r-project.org. Here you want the link that says download R, and it says we're going to choose our preferred CRAN mirror. All a CRAN mirror is a list, is a server. It's a server someplace. And what we want to do is choose a place that's closest to us. So I'm scrolling down to USA, and the two servers closest to us are probably going to be Tennessee and Texas. It doesn't matter which one you use, but closer to you is better. Once you get there, you have the option to go to the download for Mac or the download for Windows. On the Windows option, if you have a PC, you're going to use the install R for the first time. And in there, you want the 4.2.2 version, and that's going to download the exe installation file. Backing up a bit, if I want the Mac installation, I'll go to that, and now I have to choose, depending on how new my Mac is, Like my Macs are older and they're using the Intel processor, whereas newer ones might be the Apple Silicon processor. So for my computer, I needed this installation package. Once you've identified the installation package that's right for your platform and operating system, your OS, and then you're just going to download it and open it to follow the installation instructions like you normally would. Like for a Mac, typically you're dragging that application file, that file into your applications folder. Or for a PC, you're going to open the exe document or file and it runs you through the installation dialog box. Just wherever it normally puts your applications, that's fine, just default. Next, we need to install RStudio. And RStudio has been acquired by Posit, and this URL works anyway. So, but it is going to take us to a redirect to posit.co. So following this, and like I said, it's now posit.co, and I want download RStudio. Once I get here, I want to go to the free one. So the open source edition is the download I want. And now we're to our list. Step 1, install R. That's what we just did before. And now install RStudio Desktop. And they give you the link for the Windows, but really you just scroll down a little bit further and you have the Windows download, you have the Mac download, and if you use one of these other types of systems, they're there. So downloading your installation file, again, you would just install according to your platform and OS. Okay, let's just take a look around at the interface. I'll show you from my computer what the panels and the interface looks like, and then I'll encourage you to take a little break and go do your installations. Going to RStudio on my system. First, it's going to open kind of like this, where all you see is your console panel and then these two panels on the right. I'm going to expand that top one because now that's my script panel. And you can write in it. If you start with a hashtag, this is comments that are not read by R. And you can see that I have the 4.2.2 version of R running in the console panel. In the console panel is where the code is actually running. Like even though I can write it up here in the script, I can, when I run it, it runs down here in the console area. In our top right, we have the environment. And right now, when you first open it, the environment will be empty. That's normal. Think of your environment like just your desk. So if I have things I'm working on, I'll take them out of my files, I'll take my books out, and I'll put them out here on my desk to be able to work with and be handy. Same kind of idea here. Whatever we put in the environment is now accessible to R to be able to use. So if I give R things to do, I say, hey R, I want you to do A, B, and C, it needs to have the materials for doing those tasks right there in the environment. And we'll go through how to place things in the environment soon. And then this bottom panel is kind of your plots, files, packages. It's this tabs section. It's almost like a catch-all for everything else. So once we start graphing, you'll have plots there. We've got the help area. This is just the default set of tabs that came with R when it loaded, R in RStudio. So next thing we need to do is make sure R knows where your working file is. So what you're going to do is we're going to create a folder on your system where your GradStats work can be saved. So it needs to be someplace you know where it is and you have access to. On Finder for me, or Explorer if you're on a PC system, I have in my GradStats folder a folder called My R Stuff. And this, you can name the folder anything you like, but it can't have spaces. So you can call it our stuff, you can call it homework, whatever, but no spaces, and that's going to be where you're going to put all of your items for homeworks or labs, all of your scripts, things like that. And then in R, in RStudio, we need to let it know where that folder is. So I'm going to go to Tools and Global Options. And I believe in the PC environment, you might have 2 fields here instead of just this one. But regardless, you're trying to set your default working directory. So browsing, you'll see that in GradStats, I have the My R Stuff folder. Once I have it selected, I'm hitting Open, and then I'll apply and OK. And you should be able to see the path there that R knows where your working directory is. Okay, one last thing I'd like to show you before we take a little break is that you can use a cloud-based RStudio. Again, because Posit has bought RStudio, it's called Posit Cloud instead of RStudio Cloud now. So I'm going to follow this link to posit.cloud. Here, you're going to create your own new login. So get started. You want the free version, and you sign up by filling in that profile. And once you have that done, you can log in. Now, once you log in, it'll be kind of blank. Like mine has content because I've been building in it before. But if you go to New Project, New RStudio Project, we're going to let that load up. And that's one of the cons to using the cloud-based RStudio, is that sometimes there's some lag involved. So it opens up pretty much similar to RStudio downloaded onto desktop. I'm going to expand that top panel so that I have my 4 panels again. I have my console, I have my script panel, I have my environment, and I have the tabs. Files, plots, help, all the same. Some differences, like I said, you gotta have internet to be able to run this. If you have flaky internet, it's not going to work out well because it'll skip actually saving your code, which you don't want. Also, because it's internet, when you ask it to do something, there might be a little bit of lag back and forth. Another difference is as you start working with files, you don't have your working directory. You have to actually upload the files that you're planning to use with that instance of you working with RStudio here. But those are the main differences. I use both. I use the desktop and the cloud. I tend to use the desktop one more often because I don't have to worry about having a stable internet that way. Okay, so you have some choices for accessing RStudio. You can install R in RStudio on your own system. You can set up your profile with the cloud-based free RStudio, or use both. As long as you have an internet connection, they both function the same way. The more important thing is where you put your files and having access to them for your work in R. Coming up next, we're going to talk about basic coding in R and work with some packages and functions in R. So what you should do now is take a little break, go install R in RStudio or create your cloud login, kind of get ready with that, because you'll be working with those in the next part of this video. And then in the next 2 videos after that, we're going to explore data using dplyr and do some basic graphing with ggplot. Okay, let's get started with our orientation, basics and packages. We're going to go over some foundational basics of R, some coding tips, look at finding data sets and placing them into the environment, installing and loading packages, and get some intro to using functions. And of course, getting help. The basics in R is that it's like a big calculator. It's taking our numbers and variables and looking at the structure of those and being able to do things with it. So different ways that this can come in is a vector, a matrix, and a data frame. A vector is going to be just one column or one row of information of data. It's also only in one type, so it might be all integers or all numeric, but it's only one type of data in either one row or one column, and that would be a vector. You'll also see it called an array if you're looking at different tutorials and stuff. Now a matrix is multiple columns and rows of data, still only one type, either numeric or text or whatever, but a matrix of one type of data with multiple columns and rows. And then a data frame is the multiple columns and rows of data, but now it can have multiple types of data. So you could have a row of integers and a row of numeric and a row of logical. And what do we mean by those different types would fall into these categories, like what type of variable it is. And this goes back into our conversations about continuous and categorical variables. Like an integer, numeric, those would be more continuous in nature. Whereas a character or factor would be more like a string or a categorical variable. And then the logical, like true or false, would be a dichotomous type of variable. So when R calls something a data frame, that's very much like a data set in SPSS. So you can use those terms interchangeably. So in R, we have objects, functions, and arguments. An object is an item, a thing in R. So think like a noun. I have this item. Whereas a function is more like a verb. It's anything that happens. So anything that has action in R is initiated by a function. And functions have arguments to be able to condition what is going on with that function. It would be like saying I'm walking, that's the function, but I'm walking quickly, quickly being the argument or the condition of that function of walking. So we're going to play around with these a little bit in R itself. R is pretty much just a big old calculator. And the things that we do in R can just be done on a calculator as well, but it's a good way to check it out and see what's going on with R. So looking at this, our basic calculator 2 plus 3, if I put 2 plus 3 and I hit, I'm going to do Command Enter here. Now in my console, I have 2 plus 3 is 5. And that's saying there's one row and the value in it is 5. But I could also do that same thing down here in the console. I could do 2 plus 3 and just hit enter, And again, it returns one row of information, and the value in that row is 5. We can also do other calculations. 5 to the third power, 5 caret 3. I'm going to hold down Command to hit enter here because I'm in the script panel. And now it returned in the console one row of information, the value 125. So a lot of times if you're doing tutorials online in R or any kind of videos, they might have you do this kind of thing where you add something simple like that. And at first I was like, why are we doing this? We already know how to do this with a calculator. But what they're really doing is just checking to see if you installed R and RStudio correctly. So go ahead and do the little math things that they have you do, but then it'll move right along after that. And moving on, now we're going to actually name an object. So I'm going to put A assigned by 4. So A, the assigned by is like the less than and a dash and then 4. And I'll hit enter here because I'm down in the console. And now in the values in the environment, I have a value of A which has 4. The object is called A. Its value is 4. We can also do this in the script panel with even more like computations. So B assigned by 4 squared. I can say the object B is going to be assigned by 4 squared, right? I'm going to hold down Command key because it's in the script panel. Now I have a new thing, a new object in the environment called B, and its value is 16. So again, the environment, I have to put things in there for R to be able to use. So we're going to up it a little bit. Now we're going to talk about doing a function on the object. So here I'm going to make an object called obj1 assigned by the set of numbers 3, 4, and 5. So obj1 assigned by the set of numbers 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to hold down Command. And one thing, my cursor does not need to be at the end of the line for me to send this. It can be anywhere in that line, and then I'm just going to hold down Command and hit enter. And now I have a new object called obj1 in the environment, and it's one row with 3 values, 3, 4, and 5. One more here. So this one's a little more interesting. We're going to make an object 2, I'm going to call it obj2, assigned by a function with these conditions, these arguments. So let's start that up. obj2 assigned by our norm. And you see, once I start typing it, it gives me kind of a quick tip. Like I didn't do anything, it just popped up. And it says this is a normal distribution that is a random generation of a normal distribution with a specified mean and standard deviation. So I need to tell R how many observations I want, how many draws of a randomly generated normal distribution. I need to tell it what mean I want and what standard deviation I want. So now that it's started it, all I have to do is hit tab and it'll finish that request for that function as far as typing it in. So I'm going to say I want 10 values drawn. I want the mean to equal 0, and I want the standard deviation to equal 1. and I'm going to hold Command to enter. And now I have object 2. It's got these values, it keeps going. Now when you do it, you'll have different values because it's a random drawn, right? But both of our distributions will have a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1, no matter what the numbers are. So those are some beginning on what we're doing when we're working with coding in R. Some other things you want to pay attention to when you're writing in R code. One, that the hashtag means that it's comments. R is not going to use those. So if I start with the hashtag, the pound symbol, these are codings from Lab0. R won't pay attention to that. It's not going to do anything with that. So I can leave myself lots of notes, which is helpful for when I'm looking back at my script later and saying, oh, what was I doing here, right? So we can save our script as starter script. And now I have all of that there that I can use in the future if I wanted to. Coding is case sensitive. So if I name an object with DATA and then I look for a capital DATA, it's not going to work. It is case sensitive that one thing is not the other. Also, object names can consist of letters, numbers, underscores, and periods. Now, when I was doing that assign by, I could use the less than dash, or I can use equal to assign objects a value. Typically, I'm using the less than dash because this equal mark is old school and it might get confusing with more newer programming. So I'd say use that one instead, but you might see this other one like in older tutorials and stuff. And again, functions can stand on their own, or they can be an object in the environment panel. So if I only just wanted to know something, like, hey, what is this value? I can just have R computed, like a calculator. But if I want to keep it for later so that I can use it in a write-up, or I can use it for R to look to later, then I'm going to need to give it a name so that it can be in the environment where I can tell R to go look for it. Okay, so let's try these out. Typically, in future labs, I'll give you a script file and I'll provide that. It'll be in Canvas. You'll download it and it'll be something that you need to save to your working folder. Or if I give you a data set you're going to be working with, you put those things in your working folder so that they're accessible when you start working with R. You're also going to need to install or load any packages that you expect to be using and confirm your working files directory is accessible. So let's start playing out with that. Next, let's look at some data frames and data sets in R. The basic installation of R includes a bunch of data sets that we can find out what they are. All we have to do is put in data, open and close parenthesis, and run that. I'm holding the command key. And this opened up a second tab here in our script panel with all the data sets that are already available to us just from the installation of R. So let's play around with this one called Women, Average Heights and Weights for American Women. In the script panel, I can load it into the environment by just asking for it by name. And I used quotes there. So data, open parenthesis, open quotes, women, and then close. Running that, it it says a promise. It set in motion putting the data set into the environment. And when I click on it, it finishes that. It says there's 15 observations of 2 variables. So I already have some information. Also notice that it also placed information here in my console. If I do a little fold down in the environment, I see that I have height and weight as the variable names. And notice the variable names have this $ symbol in front of them. It's just an indicator that this is a variable name. It's a numerical variable, and there are the observations going off. Now we can also use different things to look around at that data set, different functions to ask our details about the data set. And we're going to use some of these inquiring functions: view, dim, names, and str. Let's try view. And this time I'm not using quotes. It takes a little bit to figure out when R wants quotes and when it doesn't. Usually I just go back and forth until I figure out which one it wants. So when I did that, when I ran view women with a control enter, it opened up another tab here with both of those variables, height and weight. And now I can even sort them, like ascending and descending, right? Some of the others I had were dim. If I run that one, it tells me in the console that I have 15 rows, 2 columns, 15, the dimensions, 15 rows and 2 columns. How about names? When we run names women, we have height and weight, the names of the variables. And str, we're told it's a data frame with 15 observations of 2 variables, variable height, variable weight. It gives us the whole structure, str, of that data set, data frame. So just a few ways to look around, right? I can also use a question mark. When you have a question about something, you can lead it with a question mark, and that will, I'm going to command enter, that will pull it up in your help tab down here. So this gives some context of that data frame. Heights and weights, women age 30 to 39, 15 observations, 2 variables, taken from the American Society of Actuaries. So interesting information that you can pull up there. All right, let's see about packages and functions. So a package is kind of like a toolkit or a set. It's also called a library. It's this collection of functions that might be related somehow. Like maybe I have a set of knives that I use, and they're all knives I use with Japanese cooking. Then that's going to be a collected set or package, right? And the R core or base comes with a basic set of packages of functions. But there's also other packages that developers are made and make available to us. So to be able to use a package and functions within it, we have to install the package and load it. So installation, you install it once on whatever system you're on, but then every time you use R, you're going to have to reload it up, like prep it to be used. So we'll go over installing and loading packages, and we're going to do them 2 different ways. We're going to do them with using functions, and we're going to do them in the Packages tab. And the two packages we're going to pull up are Tidyverse in New York City Flights 13. So first we'll do functions. Whenever you want to install a package, the function call is install packages. And you see how it pulls it right up for me. That's the one I want. So I'm going to hit tab. I'm going to use quotes here and type in Tidyverse. And command enter. And it says install packages. And if you catch it quickly, it puts a little stop sign there when it's working on something. But once it's done working, you'll get this command prompt, the greater than sign, in your console window that says, hey, I'm ready for the next request. Now that it's installed, I need to load the library or load the package. And you do that with the function called library. And this time I'm not using quotes. So library Tidyverse, it's been installed. Now I'm ready to load it. So I'm holding down command and enter, and you see the little stop sign that comes up. And then when it's done, it gives me back the command prompt. So that's one way to install and load your package. You only have to install it the first time. After that, you know, whenever you're using RStudio and you want to use Tidyverse, you would have to library load it each time until you close RStudio. So there's another way to do this, and it's here in your lower right panel, the Files, Plots, Tabs panel. In Packages, I can go to Install. And here I can just start typing in the package that I want. New York City, and it says, hey, do you want this one? Yes, I do. And then I don't have to type in the whole thing. And then I can install right there. And it works on it, and it finishes. So it's installed, but now I need to load that package. Now here, it's in alphabetical order, so I just got to get to the ends. There it is. And turn on the checkbox, and it did the function for me, is what it did. So now I have both of those packages installed and loaded and ready to be used. Okay, we've gone over some basics here. Also want to look at ways we can get help. Mentioned a little earlier, just leading with a question mark will get you some help. If I enter that, so command return, it's going to bring up the documentation for help in the help tab. But I can use two question marks, and that's going to bring up anything with that word in it, kind of like a Control F, like a find. It would find any package or description that has that word in it. So if I say double question mark mean, and I command enter, now it's giving me here in the help tab anything that has the word mean, either in the package function name itself or in the description. And of course, if I just want to use the help search, I can look up things that way. We can also use functions to look for specific information. Like if I need help on the deployer package, I can do library help equals deployer. Oh, I haven't loaded deployer yet, so I have to load it before I can use it. Let me see. Oh, I also spelled it wrong. DPLYR. Now let's try it. Oh, much better. Because it's part of Tidyverse. So I'm like, wait a minute, I did load it. And you'll find that whenever you do something wrong, don't worry, it's going to let you know. And it's just letting you know, hey, I don't have a package called this, which means, hey, let me double check that, right? So don't worry, it's going to like let you know when it doesn't understand, and then you take it apart, figuring out, okay, what did I not state correctly? And that's going to happen a lot. Our Studio Help tab, we looked at that. There's also lots of online help. And I've put links. These are links right here, but I've also put the links in the notes of the PowerPoint itself. So if you download the PowerPoint from Canvas or from the shared folder, you will also have links to all of these. I'm going to even go to the one that's the video. It's the data wrangling playlist from our studio itself. So it's kind of interesting. So going to that data wrangler YouTube, and this is from our studio or Posit itself. So that's kind of cool. And this is one of the writers of our textbook, the R for Data Science. He's one of the authors of that. And then there is an IO Site Coders Discord that really has a strong just community, and they have like monthly networking sessions and lots of places to get plugged into learning more about R. And I put the information for that in the notes of the slide as well. So, quick recap. This would be a good point for a video watching break. And what we did here in this first part of Lab0 was open our studio and explore around, setting your directory, review the panels, tried out some basic functions in R, looked at a data frame, tried out packages and functions, and learned a few ways to look for help.